Hey everyone, I decided to shoot a little tutorial here showing some different options for assembling various kits here. This one is going to cover taps, and this is purely an optional thing. If you bought one of these kits, almost all the kits I make can be assembled just with glue, so you want to put that on, just center it, glue it on, you're good. The same with the base. However, if you want to secure two items a little bit better, I want to show you how you can use fasteners as well as glue for that. There's a couple different ways that I could do this, and we have different kinds of fasteners here. This is just a little stud that you can get. Doesn't have any sort of screwdriver end on it. Then you have regular bolt that you can thread in, or you could even use a typical screw like that. What I'm going to be using for this particular project is a bolt like this. Well, okay, how do you fasten this thing, and also how do you get it centered on there? Well, first key is to find your center point. An easy way to do that, with any rectangular space, if you want to find the center point of it, you draw a line from corner to corner. In this case, you don't have to draw the entire line, but that's how you get your center point. Now, I'm going to take a center punch and use that to mark it. So it puts a little bit of a dimple in there. Now, you can always take a screwdriver bit and just turn it by hand or something like that, and you can get a little bit of a point in there too. Once again, this is just a good tool for the job. So, now I have my center point, and I know exactly where this needs to go. But it could still be problematic. How do I know that the two centers are lined up perfectly? Well, that's a good reason to go through the extra step that I am as far as putting these two parts together with a bolt versus just super gluing them together. If you're not aware of what a tap is, they're a tool kind of like this, and they're made to put threads into a hole, so you can actually thread a bolt into it. And so I have one that's the same size of the screw I'm going to be using, and the drill bit you want to use to make the hole is not as big as the tap itself. It'll actually be the inside of all the teeth here, because otherwise, if you drill a hole the same size as this, it's going to do absolutely nothing. So I got my drill, I'm ready to drill this. But one thing you want to be sure of is that you're not going to drill the hole all the way through, because that would be a problem. So one way you can avoid doing something like that is you take the drill bit, figure out what isn't going to be all the way through your item, and mark it with a piece of tape. Now I know that if I go down to the tape, it will not go all the way through. So there I got my hole drilled. Now, need to drill a hole into this piece. For that, I'm going to use my drill press just so I can make sure that that the hole's not going at an angle, and I have it as straight as possible. Now, through the magic of editing, I went ahead and I drilled the hole through this piece. Now, if you were going to connect these two items using just a stud like that where it threads into both sides. I would want this hole and this hole to be the same. However, since I actually have a bolt going through the whole thing, you actually want the hole to be big enough to slide the bolt through. Now, another tool that can be handy is a countersink. And again, there's different ways you can do this. So if you want to do this on your own kit and just thread that in both ways, you can. This is all optional stuff we're covering. But what the countersink will do is it'll make a tapered hole there so that the bolt will actually sit inside and sit flush. And then I'll have a little bit sticking out with which to thread that into the base. So now I want to tap out the bottom hole there, and you can get these handles for taps. Now, one thing you want to be careful of when you're dealing with resin, especially when you're dealing with taps this small. The resin is somewhat soft, so if you put too much torque on it, you can strip the threads out fairly easily. And but also because it's soft, if you don't have a tap and you use something like a screw like that, you actually can force it through the resin. But part of the purpose of this tutorial is to show you the use of different tools like a tap to do something like this. And you also want to make sure you unthread the tap and get a lot of the crud out of there, because if that clogs up, it'll also tend to strip the material a bit. Now, this being a smaller size bolt, I might still have problems with stripping, but we'll see how it goes. And I'll just take my countersink just to lightly clean the flashing that builds up on there. Whoa! Clean that a bit. Now, this means I'm not relying on glue to hold the two together. And also, if I don't tighten this down all the way, can even swivel the chair on the base if you want to. Tighten it down if you don't. And, you know, if you choose to glue this, you can just glue it, or to make it more secure, you can put the bolt in it. Again, like I said, it's all optional, but it was just a neat little way to be able to assemble items, make them a little bit more secure. Even if I used a really, really good super glue, if you dropped this on the floor just wrong and hit it right there, you know, it might snap off. This way, you're not really going to have to worry about that because you're not relying on just the glue. And there you go. And then I'll paint it, glue that on. There we go. Nice thing about this kind of method where you can put something together and remove it is I can now paint this and thread it together, and I don't have to worry about removing paint to get a better bond with the glue. Whereas you know, you have different options. You could glue this together. Well, now you're going to have trouble getting paint in there, especially if you're spray painting it, as I will be doing. So if you decided to paint and then glue together, well, you would have to scrape some of the paint around these surfaces so that the glue's actually touching surface to surface and not paint to paint. So also having something where you can thread it together is really handy. if you got one of these kits, it doesn't include any tools, and it doesn't include the hardware. Like I said, almost all my kits, you can just glue them together and be done with it. But I just thought that this would be a nice little way to secure stuff a little bit better between the parts. So I can paint this up and just screw it together, and there we are. So hope you enjoyed it, and that the video was helpful in some way. Talk to you later.